You are looking at a car. In the next minute, one machine will rip it to shreds. The other will melt it into a glowing puddle. Which annihilates a car faster, the shredder or the furnace? We put both to the test, side by side, one-timer. And the winner is not who you expect. Every year, 9 million cars in America take their last breath. They don't just vanish. Two machines decide their fate. One tears a car apart with teeth the size of a man. The other reduces it to liquid metal at 4,000 degrees. Same car, same clock, two very different deaths. And the faster machine is not the one that actually wins. In South Wales, there is a shredder so hungry it swallows 450 cars a day. They call it the LYNXS. 40 tons of rotating steel, a 6,865 kilowatt motor spinning 14 poles at 420 revolutions per minute. A car enters the mouth intact. In roughly 45 seconds, 3,000 horsepower of hammering force turns it into fist-sized chunks of metal, plastic, and glass. The machine does not slow down. It does not pause. It has been running for years, and it has never met a vehicle it could not vanish. Now picture a furnace. Not the incinerator at the city dump. An electric arc furnace at a steel mill. Temperatures climbing north of 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. The kind of heat that does not burn a car. It unmakes it. Frame rails glow cherry red, then orange, then white, then slump into a liquid pool like candle wax. What goes in as a 2-ton machine of engineered steel comes out as a molten river. Nothing recognizable remains. Two machines, two completely different philosophies of destruction. One tears. The other erases. Both are essential to the 10 million vehicles scrapped in America every single year. And yet nobody has ever put them side by side with the same car, the same clock, and asked the simple question, which one actually destroys a car faster? Until today. We built the test. Identical sedans, same make, same model, same year. One loaded into a shredder. One charged into a furnace. Stopwatch starts the moment each machine makes contact. The finish line is when a complete car is no longer identifiable as a car. But here is where this gets strange. Speed is only half the story. Because one of these machines leaves behind a pile of debris that still needs weeks of separation to be recycled. The other leaves a pure stream of liquid metal that can be poured into a new engine block that same afternoon. Which means the winner on the stopwatch might lose the war you did not even know was being fought. We are minutes away from feeding two perfectly good cars into the most powerful destruction machines on Earth. But before any of that, you need to understand something most people never see. Inside a shredder, there is a single rotating part that decides whether the car is destroyed or simply chewed up and spat out. And inside the furnace, there's a moment when the steel forgets every shape it ever held. That moment is measured in seconds. And it changes everything about how fast a car really dies. We stood in a yard in Ohio with two identical sedans. Same mileage, same engine block, same silver paint oxidized by the same 5 winters of road salt. One car sat on a conveyor belt feeding into the mouth of a hammer mill shredder. The other hung from a crane above a 30-ton electric arc furnace. Two stopwatches. One question. The shredder is not a blade. Most people picture a giant blender. The truth is dumber and more violent. Inside that steel housing spins a rotor armed with 40 to 60 cast hammers. Each hammer weighs up to 550 pounds. The rotor screams at 600 revolutions per minute. A car rides in on a conveyor. The first hammer strike hits the roof pillar. The roof pillar folds like paper. Then the hammers catch the engine cradle, the transmission housing, the trailing arms. The car is not being cut. It is being beaten into submission by a 1,000-pound fist spinning faster than sound. From first contact to unrecognizable debris, the stopwatch on the shredder read 47 seconds. 47 seconds for a 2,000-pound machine to become a stream of twisted metal chunks pouring out the discharge chute onto a sorting line. At that moment, if you looked at the pile, you could not point to a single piece and say, that was the door. That was the hood. That was the dashboard. The car was gone. But the shredder did not destroy the car. It rented it apart. Every atom of steel was still there. Every ounce of copper wiring, every glass shard, every scrap of seat foam, every drop of transmission fluid. All of it was now mixed together in a heap the size of a bedroom. That is when the real work begins. Magnets pull the ferrous steel from the stream. Eddy currents chase the non-ferrous aluminum and copper. Workers in hard hats stand at conveyor belts picking out plastic, rubber, and foam by hand. The industry calls the leftover auto shredder residue, or ASR. It is a gray, fluffy mix of everything that could not be separated. And 2 billion pounds of it go to landfills every year in America alone. One car through the shredder creates roughly 500 pounds of trash that will sit in the ground for centuries. Now look at the furnace. The arc furnace starts cold. 3 graphite electrodes, each thicker than a telephone pole, lower until they almost kiss the roof of the car. Then 60,000 amps of electricity jump the gap. An arc forms. The temperature at the electrode tip hits 6,000 degrees Fahrenheit in less than a second. That is hotter than the surface of the sun. The roof steel liquefies first. Glowing orange droplets fall onto the seats, igniting the foam. The glass shatters from thermal shock. But this is not random destruction. This is chemistry. The ferrous metal melts at roughly 2,700 degrees and pools at the bottom. Aluminum, copper, zinc, and paint oxidize. Some float to the surface as slag. Some vaporize. In a well-run furnace, what remains at the end is a pure bath of liquid steel, ready to pour. The furnace stopwatch stopped at 8 minutes and 12 seconds. That is the time from arc strike to the moment the last visible chunk of the car slipped below the slag layer. On the surface, the shredder won by over 7 minutes. But here's what the stopwatch did not measure. That pool of steel in the furnace is identical to the steel that came out of a mill yesterday. The same afternoon, it can be cast into a new engine block, a new chassis rail, a new car door. Not downcycled. Not mixed with filler. Identical. And nothing went to landfill. The slag is crushed and sold for roadbed. The dust is captured in baghouses and turned into zinc ingots. The furnace does not just destroy a car. It reincarnates it. So the real question is not which machine destroys a car faster. The real question is what you count as finished. The shredder wins the demolition race. 47 seconds to produce a pile of pieces that still need days of sorting, trucking, and melting to become anything useful again. The furnace loses the first race but wins the war of atoms. 8 minutes to skip every single post-processing step and deliver metal that could be stamped into a fender tomorrow morning. And that difference, those 7 minutes of silence inside the furnace, revealed something nobody on our crew expected. Something that changes the math on how fast a car really dies, and why the fastest destruction in the world might actually be the slowest way back. Here is the part nobody on our crew saw coming. The second we posted the raw stopwatch footage, the comments flooded in. Half the internet declared the shredder the undisputed champion. 47 seconds is faster than most people can microwave a burrito. But the other half, the engineers, the scrapyard operators, the guys who have been feeding these machines for 30 years, they all asked the same question. What are you actually measuring? And they were right. Because when you trace the life of that shredded steel from the discharge chute to a brand new car door, the stopwatch does not stop at 47 seconds. Not even close. The shredded pile is a chaos of 10 different materials fused together. Magnets grab the steel. That takes 2 passes. Then the eddy currents chase aluminum. Then the manual pickers stand on conveyor lines for hours pulling out seat foam, wiring harnesses, dashboard fragments. A single car through the shredder creates roughly 500 pounds of auto shredder residue that no magnet and no eddy current can touch. It is plastic and glass and rubber and carpet and dirt and oil mixed into a gray fluff that costs money to landfill. Every year, America generates 2 billion pounds of this stuff. And after sorting, the recovered steel still has to travel. Loaded onto trucks, shipped to a mill, charged into a furnace, melted, cast, rolled. End to end. From dead car to coil of usable steel, the shredder route takes an average of 5 to 7 days. The 47 seconds were a lie. Just the opening act of a week-long process. Now follow the other car. The one that entered the electric arc furnace hole. 8 minutes and 12 seconds produced a bath of liquid steel at 3,000 degrees. But here is what that bath represents. It is not just destroyed metal. It is finished metal. It needs no sorting, no trucking, no intermediate step. The same afternoon that steel can be tapped from the furnace, poured into a continuous caster, and rolled into flat sheet. By nightfall, the metal from a car that was intact at breakfast is coiled and loaded onto a rail car headed for a stamping plant. Total elapsed time from whole car to new sheet steel, 6 hours. Not 5 days. 6 hours. The shredder won the drag race. The furnace won the marathon by a margin so wide it makes the stopwatch look like a joke. But it gets worse. Because the furnace did not just win the time trial, it solved a problem the shredder cannot even touch. The shredder produces 500 pounds of landfill per car. Multiply that by 10 million vehicles a year, and you get 5 billion pounds of auto shredder residue piling up in American landfills annually. The furnace produces zero. Nothing. The non-steel components either vaporize and get scrubbed from the exhaust gas, or they float to the surface as slag that is crushed and sold for roadbed aggregate. The dust captured in the baghouse is rich in zinc oxide, which is sold to refineries. Every atom that entered the furnace either became new steel or became a product someone paid for. The furnace does not just destroy a car faster over the full cycle. It erases the concept of waste. And that is when the question flips completely. If the furnace is faster on the real clock and produces zero landfill, why do we shred 95% of end-of-life vehicles before they ever see a furnace? Why do we accept 500 pounds of trash per car when a better path exists? The answer sits in the chemistry of the machine that won the sprint but lost the war. And it reveals a secret about the shredder that the industry does not advertise on the brochures. The shredder is not a destruction machine. It is a sorting machine disguised as a destroyer. And when you see the numbers on what that disguise costs the planet, everything you thought you knew about which machine wins flips for good. The reason is hiding inside the furnace itself. A whole car does not melt into usable steel. It melts into a chemical disaster. When 60,000 amps hit a complete vehicle, everything burns at once. The copper wiring, the aluminum pistons, the zinc coatings, the chrome trim, the paint, the rubber seals. All of it dissolves into the melt. Copper is the killer. Even 0.1% of copper makes steel brittle. It cracks when you roll it, fractures when you stamp it. One car melted whole contaminates an entire 50-ton heat of steel beyond salvage. That is why every scrapyard on Earth shreds first and melts second. Not because shredding is faster. Because shredding is the only way to get the copper out before it poisons the batch. The shredder is not a destroyer pretending to sort. It is a surgeon. Every hammer strike is a dissection. The goal is not obliteration. It is separation. You beat the car into pieces small enough that a magnet can pull the steel cleanly from the copper armature still buried in an alternator housing. The eddy currents flick the aluminum intake manifold away from the steel engine block. The guys on the picking line grab the wiring harness by hand because no machine can tell a copper filament from a plastic clip. The shredder reduces the car to rubble so that every single material can be graded, sorted, and sold at the highest possible market price. Clean No. 1 heavy melt steel sells for $450 a ton. Contaminated furnace steel from a whole car would sell for less than half that, if anyone would buy it at all. So the furnace won the single car race we made up on a Tuesday afternoon in Ohio. But the shredder won the Industrial War 30 years ago and never looked back. The real head-to-head test is not shredder versus furnace. It is separation versus contamination. Purity versus speed. Profit versus landfill. And that is where the numbers come crashing down on the shredder like one of its own hammers. Even with all that sorting, America still landfills 2 billion pounds of auto shredder residue every year. 2 billion pounds of plastic and foam and glass and rubber that no magnet can touch. A furnace burning a whole car creates no residue. But it also creates no saleable steel. Just a toxic soup of alloy that metallurgists call garbage. The only machine that actually solves both problems is neither the shredder nor the furnace alone. It is a system that does not exist yet at scale. A way to strip every non-ferrous component before the car ever meets a hammer or an arc. Robots with spectral cameras that identify copper by the wavelength of light it reflects. Laser sorters that kick plastic out of the stream with puffs of compressed air. Chemical baths that dissolve zinc from galvanized steel without touching the iron beneath. That technology is running in labs right now. And when it arrives, the shredder as we know it will vanish from the earth. Not because it lost a drag race to a furnace, but because a smarter machine finally learned how to do its job without burying half the car in a hole. Until then, the answer to our question is not a clean win for either side. The shredder destroys a car in 47 seconds on the clock and 5 days in the real world, leaving a trail of trash behind it. The furnace destroys a car in 8 minutes and 12 seconds and produces steel so dirty it cannot be sold. The fastest destruction machine ever built is still the one we have not invented yet. And that machine will not tear cars apart in a cloud of flying glass. It will take them apart, bolt by bolt, wire by wire, atom by atom, until nothing is thrown away because nothing needs to be. The car that wins the race will be the one that was never destroyed at all. It will simply become something else while you watched. That car you drive right now will one day face the same test. A conveyor belt or a crane. A hammer or an arc. 47 seconds of violence or 8 minutes of fire. What happens next depends on a decision made long before the engine stops. Not by you. By an industry that has spent 30 years optimizing for profit, not for zero waste. But the strange thing about watching two identical cars die on the same clock is that the question stops being about which machine is faster. It becomes about what you are willing to lose in the process. We lost 500 pounds of landfill from the shredder. We lost usable steel from the furnace. The machine that truly wins hasn't arrived yet. But it is close. And when it gets here, a car will not be destroyed. It will simply continue its life in a different shape. If this video changed how you think about recycling, I want to hear from you. Which machine surprised you more? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. And if this kind of content makes sense to you, there is a special offer waiting for you through the link in the first pinned comment. Hit subscribe. Not for me, but for what we are going to tear apart next.